yeah, you got room for.
So my new injections, they've actually got at the pharmacy. They're just waiting for pre-authorization from the doctor. So Monday, that's going to be fun. I just have to learn how to do it. It's going to be great.
Yay, you get to stab yourself on purpose.
So are we waiting
I already
for
had my new injections.
Are we
They've
waiting for a
actually
button
got
click or
at
for a
the
time
pharmacy.
period?
They're just waiting for pre-authorization.
Click
He's
the
trying to
button.
fix it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're live now.
Oh, we're live now.
We're live on
All
YouTube.
right.
Yay!
Okay.
Just remember, everyone, don't mention
Yep.
The thing? Yeah.
I just
What's
spaced
the
out.
thing?
Like
One of these
my
days-
brain actually stopped and went, no, you really shouldn't say that.
Yeah, don't mention that one thing. One of these days, these might actually get monetized, and I don't want them to be demonetized. So
Immediately demonetized.
exactly.
It's like, congratulations, you've been monetized, followed
Okay,
by you've
I
been
am now
demonetized.
switching
Also, this
our
whole-
audio on.
Since we're using this for production, this whole thing is a tax deduction over here too.
Technically, you can write off the room, considering the acoustic equipment required and space necessary.
No,
All
because
right.
I use this room for other things, but these pretty much only get used for video and audio production.
Then write off the 4 square feet it takes.
Yeah.
Do you want to actually start the slideshow?
Well, what I want to do
Right,
is
you want me to do that, don't you? Okay,
Yeah.
so
robot roll call.
isn't
Okay, robot roll call.
I'm pointing to at least on my stream, I'm pointing to Tom's phone. He's using it for monitoring.
Yep, that's
Tape
actually that.
Next to me is Jim. Continuing on, that's Bunny. Continuing on, that's Final. And then at the bottom is Tom over there. And then, of course, Tom's sharing his screen for our slideshow presentation.
Yay!
Woohoo!
Which, for some
All
reason,
right,
is...
so what do we have tonight, Bunny?
Okay.
Tonight we have Star Trek Discovery is back, baby. Edgar Allan Poe, because when it's the season, you gotta share some love. Or death in his case. Time travel, did anyone get it right? The guy's opinions tonight.
Yeah, this
Fun with
is entirely
sound.
opinion.
Yeah. Fun with Sound with Tom Tardis. Zen 3 with Judd the Spud Sandage, and Final, because I think they're actually both talking on that subject.
Well, there really isn't anything new, so it's like, yeah, sure.
And if in the mood, the old man of the mountain will talk about his Star Trek continues review and thoughts. But that might be postponed for another night. So please, stay tuned for more.
Do we have a commercial to run?
Actually, I could totally run one. I do have that power.
We should make some.
Yeah, we need to make some
Definitely
commercials.
make some.
Okay, of course, always. Caution, spoilers ahead. Caution.
And
spoilers
we're not
ahead.
kidding. If you have not yet watched episodes 1 and 2 of Star Trek Discovery, push the pause button, go watch them, and then come back. Or you're going to find out.
Are
things
we
you didn't
starting
wanna
with
know.
season 3?
We're at season 3. What did I say? I said season 3, right?
You didn't say a season. You just said episodes 1 and 2. Season 3,
Well, you know-
episodes 1 and 2.
Well, you know, that's
Please.
because this show has rebooted 3 times now.
Yes, but we are starting
We had
episodes
we had
1
a-
and 2, season 3.
yeah.
Okay.
We had a reboot halfway through season 1. We had a reboot in season 2 when Captain Pike came aboard. This is yet another reboot. And as we all know, the Discovery went 930 something years into the future. So just to set the timeline clear, that puts Discovery. Let's see. Discovery was 8 years before the original series, which puts and as we talked about last week, Star Trek: The Next Generation, Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek: Voyager all took place approximately 100 years after the original series. So that puts Discovery 930 or 960, whatever it is, 930 years ahead of their own timeline, and it also puts it 830 years ahead of the timeline for The Next Generation, which means that it's also more than 800 years after the Romulan explosion. And
Sure.
the reason I bring that up is because, Judd, what were you saying about dilithium?
Everybody in so far within the first 2 episodes here, they're using they're not even talking about antimatter or anything like that. Dilithium is the power source that runs everything. It's not.
No,
Well, and
it's not.
I got into a conversation with someone on Facebook about this too. Somebody said something about why is it the Romulans aren't the Romulans don't need antimatter. They use the singularity drives. So they use a singularity core to run their power their systems. So why aren't the Romulans now kings of the galaxy? And it's exactly what you said. Dilithium is not the power source. Dilithium is the catalyst. Think of it in a modern car. Dilithium is the carburetor to the engine. Dilithium converts all that incoming energy from the antimatter explosion into something that the starship's power systems can actually use. Unfortunately, dilithium is also consumable, so it takes it actually wears out as it goes. That's the only thing I could think of. But yet, all the dilithium in the galaxy exploded, which means we're going to have to assume it's only the refined dilithium because there's still some dilithium out there. By definition, not all of it exploded, right? But it's now super rare instead of being something that everybody just can dig up out of the ground wherever.
Well, it wasn't ever anything you could dig out of the ground or wherever. That's why they had the lithium mines in the active.
Right. Yeah, there were. It was always a somewhat rare resource.
If I remember correctly, in the there was a Star Trek novel back in the 90s by Diane Duane called Enterprise that really went into an in-depth discussion of how the impulse and warp drives worked, all the way down to explaining the insignia on people's shirts in the original series were actually showing the power curve of the warp drive engine.
Oh wow!
But that's what that arch at the bottom meant. That was what gave them the ability to explore. Was the additional power they got by using a dilithium antimatter mix, and they also went big into the impulse drive.
Another one of the books, since you mention it, one of the post TNG books has Riker serving aboard a freighter. And the freighter actually has a fusion reactor instead of an antimatter reactor. And just as an aside, all of the Enterprise also has several fusion reactors, including all the impulse drives. The impulse engines are actually fusion reactors. But what I thought was interesting is they were actually able to get to warp 2 using this fusion drive. Obviously, it made the ship really slow, but somehow, they were still able to pull off enough power to do it.
Now, there is a that's where I get my name from. Actually, no, that's not where I get my name from. There is one book. Sorry, there's enough old Star Trek novels that's it's kind of hard to remember plot lines until I start thinking about them.
That is
And
for sure.
Final knows about this. Brad knows really well about this particular episode because it's this particular book. It's really funny. How much for just the planet?
How much for just the planet?
That was like a musical Star Trek book. It was really good.
Yeah, it's like if a Star Trek episode or even movie was written by Mel Brooks. It's just.
But they do go into the mining and development and use of dilithium and what it's used for. I mean, granted, it's all taken tongue in cheek, but one of my favorite lines is, a good dilithium engineer knows that to cut dilithium, you don't just straight up cut it. You make a slice here, and then you wait 2 weeks. You make another slice over here. You make another, wait a couple more weeks, make a slice here, and hey, it's done because it's a fourth dimensional thing. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think, they said it's like you cut it today, you cut it in 4 hours, you cut it on Tuesday, and you cut it 3 days after the day you started cutting. It was just like this weird, like, wait, what? Kind of moment. It's like it's hilarious.
There was a scene where they were using big sheets of dilithium as cooking ware. They were bringing out the main entree, the main course, on a sheet of dilithium. Like, how would you do that? It's overabundant on this planet, so that's why they were using it because nothing hurts it in the oven.
I was gonna say
Well,
if it can handle an antimatter reaction, it can handle a cooking oven. Good lord,
True.
that camera's terrible compared to that one. It's a 4K camera, but yet look how fuzzy it looks. I mean, good lord.
Fuzzy,
And
fuzzy.
that's still a good webcam compared to this guy. Anyway, sorry to distract.
Quality of sensor?
Yeah, really. So, so leading into the beginning of the episode, as we know, the Discovery at the end of season 2, the evil AI known as Control did what every AI ever will do, and realized that the universe is better off without these pesky humans making things complicated. So it was going to do what they all do and wipe out all organic life in the galaxy, which strangely is also the plot for Star Trek Picard. But setting that aside, yeah, and talk about recycling plots. I mean,
I
so
think it might have been the same writers.
Discovery gets out of the jam by taking the starship and all of the AI software that was loaded on board its computer 1,000 years into the future, and because apparently Control doesn't have the patience to wait around 1,000 years and pick up its campaign where it was before. So the very first thing we see after the recap from last season is we see this ship right here. Now, Jim nailed my thinking the first 2 seconds after I asked him what he thought this looked like. Does anybody else remember this scene? And what did you guys think of? What was the first thing you guys thought of when you saw this ship flying around, being chased by the other ship through the wreckage of those starships?
I kind of thought of this guy here.
Oh, that's a good one. I hadn't thought about that guy.
This is the mothership from the game Homeworld.
Yeah.
To me, looking at that, it kind of screams, the pivotal scene at the end of episode 4. They're all running from the Death Star, and boom.
Right. And the thing is I'm watching the ship flying, and so Book is the guy in charge of this, is flying this thing. He's actually over here on the right side of the ship. This whole area here is cargo. There's several cargo pods. So I'm sitting here going, you got a guy who stole someone else's cargo, flying through a field of wreckage, being shot at by another guy in this vessel that's like this asymmetrical thing. And just the whole thing just made me feel like Han Solo being chased by one of the bounty hunters, through the asteroid field outside of Hoth. I mean, that was the first thing I thought when I saw it. And then that wormhole comes, he's getting away, and then the wormhole comes along and screws everything up.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene. I really enjoyed between that scene and was it right before it when we saw the communications guy, which we'll get to later. I really enjoyed seeing the difference in technology between Discovery's era and this future era, especially the programmable matter. Yeah. Does anybody else have any thoughts about the starship escape and the wormhole entry? And I didn't get a slide of Vernon coming in.
Hit the ship.
Yeah, she hits the ship.
It's like, oh man, the inertia behind that had to be unreal.
Yeah, so that spacesuit she built is a lot more powerful than any of us gave her credit for.
No joke.
To be able to bounce off that thing, slam into the surface of a planet, and still be able to get up and fly away. Also, what do you all think about her solution to her problem? I mean, literally, hello, IT, have you tried turning it off and back on again?
Well, when she was falling towards the planet, she was like rebooting everything and screaming at it and all that. I was waiting for her to make this swooshing dive off the top of the planet and do the yee-haw like Iron Man in the first. That's what I was thinking about.
Well, dang it, I lost my train of thought.
But it was a very short train to begin with.
Yeah, very short.
Crazy.
just an engine and a caboose.
You sure it wasn't just the caboose? There's like nothing else left.
That explains why it's not going anywhere.
Oh, now I remember. A quote from somewhere, I forget what, and it could be reused however you want. As far as her suit being as strong as it is, it's as strong as the plot needs it to be.
Oh, plot armor. Ouch.
Plot armor, yeah.
So you know how the Ferengi have the rules of acquisition,
Yeah.
which is something
Yeah.
like 204 rules. I have worked up the rules of drama, and so far there is only one rule. Actually, there's like two rules, but the first rule is logic, reason, science, and your own established canon and mythology don't matter as long as you can make something interesting happen in the story. With the second rule being that most stories only work if the people in the story are stupider than the audience.
Well, let's see what the current people think of Star Trek fans. Well, let's see. How many people currently involved in production of Starship shows actually give a rat's ass about Star Trek?
More than you would imagine.
Well,
Yes.
you know, and here's an interesting thing. Aside from Star Trek 6, what is regarded as the best of the Star Trek movies?
Wrath of
Two.
Khan.
Bunny,
Cricket.
you
Cricket.
don't have an opinion? Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan is widely regarded as the best of the Star Trek movies, and there are those who will tell you the Star Trek 6 is better. But Star Trek 2 was actually produced by a guy who had never seen an episode of Star Trek. He came in wanting to make a great movie that happened to be about Kirk and Spock and all these guys. And
this movie was written by somebody who'd only seen one episode of Star Trek. The same guy that wrote Star Trek 2.
yeah,
It was Nicholas Meyer. But he wrote some really good Sherlock Holmes books.
so I think that we got really down on J.J. Abrams, for example, for basically wrecking Star Trek with the Kelvin universe, but I don't think knowing Star Trek is really a prerequisite for writing good drama and good space opera with the Star Trek name on it. I think that you have to simply be good. I mean,
The only requirement I would think for a good Star Trek whatever is try to keep a little bit in line with canon. That's all. With
yeah, and that really
canon.
helps, doesn't it? Speaking of canon, have you found any canon mistakes in the first episode, Judd? There was at least one that I know of.
Yeah, there's one, and I see that we have a slide for it as well. So when that slide comes up, we'll talk about it.
Okay, so I don't actually know what our next slide is because I don't have my little window up with the
Previews.
yeah,
Cricket.
cricket. Where is it? Notes, slide 6.
It's the one after.
Oh, I
this
don't
one.
remember what. Speaker notes. That's what I was looking for. There, I can see what the next slide is. Okay, so what happens? Michael lands on the planet. This planet, forgot what it was called. It doesn't have a name apparently. And what's the first thing that happens when she gets there? She gets into a fight. Neither one of them wants to hurt the other one, but at the same time, they both feel threatened by the other one. So, I got to say,
start punching the crap out of each other.
I really like these two characters together. They seem to play well together. And their initial tension, I think, is fairly well done. I mean, obviously in this fight, they're pretty much equal. He couldn't overpower her, but she wasn't able to take him down either. Even though he had the advantage of
injured.
Yeah, and she's injured on top of all that. So one of the things that I realized as I was rewatching the episode to tear it down, to break it down to 4 or 5 salient points. A lot happened in this episode. At first, I thought these 2 episodes were kind of small and didn't really go very far, but so much was packed into them that we just and they did it so effortlessly that we didn't realize that all this stuff happened.
They're both nearly an hour long.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Michael meets Book. They go over to the exchange, the Andorian exchange. He betrays her. She tries to get him back. Tries to get even with him, and the next thing you know, she steals a bunch of dilithium, and they run off, being chased by. And now we can address the Morn in the room.
My only problem with that is, unless they're trying to use the original Morn costume, that's not what his species is supposed to look like. Because
Really?
it was established in DS9 that the reason why Morn had no hair, or had hardly any hair, is because he kept latinum in one of his mini stomachs. Liquid latinum. Which was causing poisoning throughout his body. That's why he looked kind of the way he did.
That's interesting. I have to go back and find that episode.
And then at the end of that episode, Morn actually upchucks a little bit of latinum and gives it to, I think, somebody. I forget who.
Gross.
Yeah.
Okay, with that gross detail, I'm gonna go ahead and take my first shot of the night, because good grief, that's just a no.
And I have to say, I loved how Michael's affect changed when she got hit by that space dust. When that guy dusted her to the space truth serum. Suddenly she went from being almost Vulcan-like to like being really emotional and like really just over the top. I loved it. I loved seeing her laugh and enjoy herself instead of being all like, I am a Vulcan and I am not really a Vulcan and I'm trying to be Vulcan. And she actually acted like a human being finally.
Yeah. But the thing is, you have to remember, like, a lot of times laughter can be a mask for nervousness, for fear, for self-doubt. And she shows just how much of that is hidden inside her, really.
Yeah.
It lets us connect with, the very humanity that is the character. And even though she is trying not to divulge information, she's going to this other truths within her own truth herself.
Yeah. That scene right here, I loved it. She pops out, she gets spewed back out by this giant space worm, and she's like, I didn't know how this day was going to turn out. Just the looks. She gave like 4 or 5 distinct looks, as he was picking her up, and I loved every single one, and I just couldn't get them on the camera. I mean, I was trying, but CBS, and this is one thing that really annoys me, CBS has locked down the stream so that you can't capture frames. The only way to get pictures, the only way to legally get pictures of this is to take a camera and point it at your TV set, and that's really frustrating. They minimize the image every time you pause it. They minimize it down to the corner of the screen, so you got to back up and you got to pull out your phone and you try to take a picture while it's going. OBS doesn't work. Snip Tool doesn't work. None of the usual screen capture things work because it's all the trusted computing. So as the third pilot to Discovery, and I'm going to say that we have 3 distinct series in Discovery, not just 3 seasons, but they're going to be 3 series with 3 very different takes on Star Trek, and 3 very different, in this case, 2 different eras. What do you think? What do you guys think of this episode as a new pilot to this new series of Discovery?
Well, my thoughts on it.
Well, share them with everyone because not everyone knows your thoughts on it.
It's Star Trek Andromeda.
Star Trek Andromeda. That's right.
You're not wrong.
I think it speaks to the times we're in, and a lot of it is like they're looking for a new hope. And that's exactly what this season's going into, is they're looking for something tangible. They're looking to keep believers alive, that there is still good in the world, especially with all the chaos and turmoil that is this year. So I think a lot of this season and the way it's starting, she's losing everything. But she still has hope. She still has determination. I'm going to get attacked by a cat. Sorry. I'm not sure if anyone saw the paws behind me, but...
Well, and that's one thing that Burnham and Saru have in common. Saru gave up his entire world in order to join Starfleet. And eventually, of course, he managed to reconcile with his people and even bring his people out of their slavery and oppression. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my favorite character in Star Trek Discovery, Saru and Tilly. Tilly, I heart Tilly. She's so great. She's really the audience perspective character of the show. She's us as we, the eyes that we see everything through. And I thought she really brung it to this, even though she was nervous as crap. I thought she really brung it for this episode.
I talk when I'm afraid. Then keep talking.
Yeah. Keep talking.
Been there, done that. I talk when I'm nervous. I talk when no one responds. Well, then keep talking. That's fine. I love that.
So whose inner Star Trek junkie was screaming bloody murder at the fact that that ship landed on a planet in one piece?
I was looking at the nacelles going, seriously?
There's not enough depth and dismay on that ship for it to, like, even if they, dampen the landing with, reversing tractor beams and everything else, the shields being at the weakened capacity they were at, they shouldn't have had, they should be missing shit. Yeah.
I would much rather have had that. I mean, as dramatic as the descent into planetary space was, I didn't get the picture of the ship coming down. I should have put it in there. As dramatic as that was, I would much rather have seen the ship get trapped in orbit with no power and, "Oh, Captain, we're losing altitude, Captain. If we don't start the reactor soon, we're going to burn up in the atmosphere." And that would have been, to me, a much more reasonable plot device than parasitic ice that's going to eat your ship.
They still have to go forward with the difference in technology, even though we're not as advanced now in real time from, when Star Trek first started.
Mm-hmm.
They're still trying to show a time lapse between that first series and this one. So they're still trying to make it advanced. They're trying to bring in the new viewers, the new age followers, the new age believers, if you will.
Yeah, but my point here being that the ship should not have been able to land on a planet intact. Voyager was unique. The Intrepid class was unique as the very first starship that could actually land on a planetary surface.
Yeah, and it was designed with that from the beginning.
Up until then, this ship should have broken into a million pieces on its way down through the atmosphere.
Yep, but then the show would be over. But yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Even in Star Trek: The Next Generation, the Enterprise D was capable of a planetary controlled crash, but only the saucer section. Part of the reason the saucer section can separate is it would turn into basically a giant aerodynamic escape pod. Yeah, and it could actually glide down through the atmosphere and land using its impulse drive. But again, even the Constitution class, the original Enterprise, was capable of that. But in that case, once they separated the saucer, it could not be reattached. If you notice on the original series, the impulse drive is actually on the back of the saucer section. I'll be right back.
So while Tom grabs his saucer, and that is not an euphemism. Shit, can't talk.
No, that is not a euphemism.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that all I have is the J.J. Abrams verse hot rod version of the Enterprise. But this is the impulse drive right here. This is what actually acts as a rocket when it's flying at sublight speeds.
Yeah.
These are not rockets. These generate a field around the ship that actually, they're like giant magnets, and they generate a field around the ship that allows it to actually break Einstein's
break the laws of relativity. Warp bubble.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, if this, imagine if this thing were to land on a planet. I mean, the whole secondary hull here would just be crushed, and the nacelles would fall down because these warp pylons aren't really capable of holding up the weight of the nacelles. Not in an atmosphere.
Meant to resist the stresses that would be put in against them without gravity as a factor.
And this model always drives me crazy because look how tilted up the warp nacelles are. It's wrong. And the model is not like that in the movie. This toy has always just been really terribly made.
The
So,
other issue,
whatever company made this thing, you guys did a crap job.
the other issue I had with the J.J. Abrams universe is they actually had the ship built on the ground. Why?
Yeah, that was
Because it was dramatic.
they wanted that scene with Kirk driving by on his little motorbike and looking at the ship.
Yeah, that makes
There
no
was a
damn
book
sense.
though.
It's cheaper.
There was.
If you are a post-gravity civilization, in other words, you can get out of your gravity well, it's no longer an issue. You don't necessarily control gravity, but you have the ability to basically walk around it, where it's no longer an issue. You would not build things on the ground where things would be where weight becomes an issue, where you have to worry about all these extra factors of problems. You would build in space where the only thing you got to worry about is inertia.
What's interesting is actually a couple of the books talked about building the Enterprise, and what they actually did is they built the saucer section in one giant component on the ground, and then they flew it up on impulse drive into orbit, and then they attached it in dry dock. They attached it to the neck that held on to the rest of the ship. I thought that was an interesting idea. I tend to agree with you though, Brad. I don't think that you would build a ship like this. I don't think you'd build one of these on the ground ever. The whole idea of doing that is ludicrous.
Just think about the amount of cost, the infrastructure you would need to build just to build part of that ship. It's like 3D printing. The amount of support you'd have to put up would be costing almost as much as the actual item you're building. It's not worth it.
Well, yeah, and of course, keep in mind the whole visual design of the Enterprise was entirely because of somebody thought it looked cool back in 1966. I mean, if you were to build, if you started on a clean slate, you wouldn't have a ship that looks like that. If you started on a clean slate today, and Star Trek had never existed, and you were building one for the first time, but still using the ideas of how the warp drive and everything else works, I think you definitely would have a different ship. You'd have something that's got a lot more symmetry, bidirectional symmetry, both vertically and horizontally, and you'd have you'd have something where the nacelles are sticking out the side, like the nacelles are sticking out the side here, like the Romulan bird, well, not the bird of prey. What is it? The Romulan warbird.
Yeah, the thing that always makes me laugh when I see all these spaceship designs, I look at them and go, why are they so streamlined? It's like, because it just looks so great. I was like, no, dumbass, it's because you've been concentrating on aerodynamics on the ground. In space, you can build a damn cube. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, these things do seem to hit things an awful lot. And by being streamed, well, I thought about this, and I was actually thinking about what if you just built a starship that looked like a box, right? We literally take a box and put a couple of engines on the side of it and throw that up there in space, and it's flying around with our little space drive, just flying around in space. You're flying through space dust. That's just, that thing is still gonna be a problem in terms of collisions and impacts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So every time I've designed a hypothetical spacecraft, I've always had at least a tapered nose, and that nose is armored, so that most of the armor in the ship is in the nose, so that if you hit an asteroid or even small rocks or something, they would just bounce off the nose rather than hit the front of that thing and just drill a hole right through it, right through the entire length of the ship and come out the back.
Yeah. So, Jim, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I think that's why they have a deflector system on the Enterprise, not so they're not running into things.
And
That's true.
They always called it the deflector dish, and as a kid growing up watching Star Trek, they always called it the deflector dish, and I never understood what the hell it was for until I read one of the books and was like,
Tom, do that again.
oh yeah.
Right there. That itty bitty dish.
So, for those of you that
Looks
don't know
like
what the deflector dish actually is, there's two what are called deflector systems on the Enterprise. One of them is the system that provides defense in combat, and it creates basically an egg-like shaped shield around the ship. and that's what things go. That's what the pew pews bounce off of when you shoot the ship. But this is called the Navigational Deflector, and what the Navigational Deflector does is it pushes out basically a gravity beam, what's called a gravimetric beam in the front of the graviton beam in the front of the ship, and it like you're flying along and you come if there's an asteroid out there in front of the ship, a large enough asteroid, the ship will actually change course and go around. But like space dust and little stuff that's just too plentiful out there to just avoid all the time, it actually like pushes out of the way, like the cattle catcher on the front of a train. Yeah. So that's what this is. This is the starship's cattle catcher. And Judd's giving us another good example of a.
Well, this is actually
that
Eagle
looks
Moss,
like the OG.
This is the Eagle Moss collection.
Is that an Eagle? I was about to ask if that's an Eagle Moss version.
Yeah, this is.
I don't know where my
accurate.
TNG Enterprise is. I have a.
Judd, can you put it back up and put your hand behind it so we can see it better? There we go. Thank you. That is much appreciated. Let me.
It's actually not a bad model. I've got all of the other ships for at least the Enterprises.
And as you can see over my shoulder back there, you know, the Enterprise is a far cry from the real spaceship. First spaceship that we put up into space. The the ones that are based on rockets.
Yeah.
That back there is my model of the Apollo 11. The only ship that the only vessel that has actually carried a human being to another body in space and back again. Nobody else, so far as I know, no one else has walked on the moon besides Americans, and they all did it on Apollos. Yes, and my room is now a wreck. Things are falling down because this guy can't. Yeah, see, I mean, I can't even put this thing on my desk. That's how awkward that design is, and why it should not be landing on planets.
Fair enough.
Okay, so moving on.
Awfully dusty, but I have from
your hand behind it.
the most recent
Oh god, that is
Star Trek
super
movie.
dusty.
Oh yeah.
But this actually has a magnet on it to keep it in place.
What class is that?
It has a magnet on it so it doesn't wiggle.
Well, it looked a little bit, but not much.
Yeah. What class is that?
What class is that supposed to be?
I don't know. It's the J.J. Abrams verse, so
It's an Abrams verse ship.
It's an Abrams verse ship. It doesn't exist in canon. I'm sorry.
Okay. Interestingly enough, a little piece of trivia. This computer right here is a mock-up of an Altair 8800. The Altair got its name because the guy that was designing the Altair 8800, they didn't have a name for it yet. And his son said, "Well, how about we use this Altair from Star Trek?" And so this machine is literally named for a planet in Star Trek.
I mean, you see Star Trek pop up in interesting locations. I think there was a project in the mid-2000s where people were they were delidding integrated circuit chips and doing analysis of them. And this one guy doing it kept finding all these really interesting little things that had nothing to do with the circuit. They're like, there was a Star Trek nerd when there was a little NCC 1701 engraved in the silicon for the chip. Or a little Chewbacca or Han Solo. Or I think one person actually, I think it was on the die of an Intel test chip. It was an engineering test sample chip. They delidded it to check something, and they looked at it, and down there in the bottom right corner, very, very tiny, was an NCC 1701 original Enterprise engraved. And I was like, if that ever went into production with that, the CBS found out, they're going to... Intel's going to lose their ass in court. But the thing is you find these as one-offs, and it's just like, nerd culture pops up in the most interesting places.
Well, the Mike Mayfield Star Trek game is arguably one of the most popular computer games ever made, and it was, Paramount CBS never gave him a license to make it. He didn't ask for one, and so far as I know, they've never tried to stop anybody from remaking or distributing that game.
Yeah, I think it might be because they're not making any money, and they're like, it's promoting Star Trek,
Yeah.
it's getting fans back into
And that
it.
game is on literally every computing platform in existence. From
As I say, isn't it in Doom the one's always going jockeying for number one on most ported game ever?
something like that. Yeah, because I mean, it runs on anything that runs BASIC mostly without changes, other than changing the machine-specific commands. Okay, so back to Firefly. Star Trek Discovery Episode 2. At this point, I thought it changed from being changed from being a Star Wars remake to being a Firefly remake when they entered the bar, and the cowboy comes in and basically he's like, "I run this planet. You guys answer to me. You can give me your dilithium."
I did like the touch where basically they went to, it's a shady little bar town and everyone's gonna be on a standoff, and they're like, "Prove you are who you say you are." And Tilly's just like, "Let me quote this shit right here, right now. This is out of the fucking book."
And I
They don't
tell
know
you,
that. They don't know what the book is. It's been gone for 900 or almost 900 years. 800, because he said it since before he was born, 150 years before he was born or something like that. But, this guy here, we don't get to see him long, but we like him. He's a very likable character right off the bat. And it's because he's what Star Trek always looked for. He was a true believer. He always believed that, the Federation was going to come and help them. The Federation was going to free them from the tyranny that is basically, what would we call it, a modern day equivalent?
Robber Baron is actually the term you're thinking of.
Robber Baron.
Or land baron. They used to do exactly what this guy does. They would take over in large swaths of land, and they would control a town. And you couldn't deal with anybody in that town without dealing with him.
Yeah, hence the old song, "I sold my soul to the company store."
Yeah. I'll tell you, this guy's death ticked me off, and not because it was horrific, and because it was, but because it was so unnecessary to the plot to kill him. And it was just like, again, he was killed just to show that this guy was a jerk.
Yeah.
And then they let him go. And just for a minute, I understand Saru's point. We're better than that. We don't kill for revenge. But letting that guy go, that guy was an avowed enemy of the Discovery. Letting him go left the room with an enemy at their back. That's what I think was a stupid tactical move.
Real quick, though, Saru gave the choice to the barkeeper.
And neither Saru nor the barkeeper should have let that man walk out of that door.
But the thing is, for Saru, he's got first contact and an initiative inside his head that was, this is how things are. Just because we are so far away from home, just because we're not in our time, I'm not going to break the Federation rules. And he's sticking with that. This is their planet. This is their situation. And the barkeeper gets that choice. He gets that choice. And he decides that he's going to let the guy live. But the thing is, he sends him to an uncertain death.
Hey, Jim, what happened when Captain Kirk exiled Khan?
He became a huge problem.
Not that bad, really. I forgot where he was.
It came back to bite him in the butt.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that guy's going to come back to bite him in the butt. And that's one of the rules of writing. Can anybody tell me what rule of writing that is?
That's Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's phaser. Thank you very much.
You're really going to mess with the Russians on literature.
You might want to explain to them what Chekhov's gun is.
Are you kidding? Russians invented literature. Okay, so we all know the idea of foreshadowing in fiction. When you are going to set up, and we were taught this in every creative writing class I ever took, that if you're going to set up the solution to a problem, you had better introduce that solution early enough in the story that it makes sense by the time you get to the end of the story where the solution is. Chekhov and the writer Chekhov, he actually he spelled that out, and he basically said, if at the beginning of your story you have a rifle hanging over the fireplace, that gun had better go off by the end.
Better go off
and
by the third act.
By the third act, yeah. And I've seen it quoted different ways, but the whole point being that you first, you don't put unnecessary elements into a story. A lot of writers will digress like crazy. And I mentioned earlier this week that Back to the Future is a great example of a story that is perfectly written, in that there's no spare line of dialogue in that movie. And that's so this guy being let go can only mean one thing. If you believe in Chekhov's phaser, then that guy has to come back by the end of the season, and he has to be a threat. And I still say it was a tactical mistake to release him. At the very least, they should have kept him. They should have kept him locked up, and I think they should have executed him, because they really didn't have the resources to hold him safely.
And you'll notice that Giorgio said so in the episode.
She did, yeah.
Yeah, they basically hung a lantern on it. It's going. We don't know how, but that dude is coming back, and he is either going to be a solution or a massive problem.
Speaking of Giorgio,
What?
What did you guys think of her portrayal of this character, and how much fun she is?
She's awesome.
I just love the fact that most people look at her and go, "Why is she so familiar?" And I just slap my head and go, "You've got to be kidding me! That's a very famous actress, just not in the U.S." And
I
she's
was
perfectly
slightly
cast.
pained, but that's because the character itself is just, she is made to be irritating.
I don't find her irritating at all. I find her a breath of fresh air.
Of course you would, Jim.
She
I
is
don't
the,
necessarily the
She's in amongst all these stuffy Starfleet types, and she just walks in and slaps down some realism.
whoa!
You
Do it
just
again.
everything. But
It's weird. I hit my mouse and my camera freaks out.
yep. Seizure warning. Seizure warning. He broke his
Oh no,
webcam.
Jim's been hacked. Jim has been hacked.
It's the future coming.
No, that's the.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh,
Adrian.
Jim! You have been space probed. The whales are coming to get you.
I have a feeling it was just the USB port jiggling around. And the
Probably.
encoder's just freaking out.
About half a frame got dropped, and the camera's trying to decipher the data.
Captain, we can't take any more.
We
Oh,
lost
I mean,
him.
that comes to the end of. I mean, that kind of comes to the end of. How did I not? I missed some pieces. I had 3 or 4 more pictures that didn't make it in here, and I'm really bummed.
Moving on.
So they that's what happened, is we didn't get to the end of. We didn't really get to the end of Burnham's story in the first episode. So the final thing that happens in the first episode, of course, is that that we find out that Book is actually he is part of the intergalactic PETA, and he is saving these transformers from extinction.
No. Take that back. He is not part of PETA. He is a space creature rescue organization. He actually does something good.
Okay.
Not PETA. Again,
I'm
Not PETA.
Carl Perkins.
I am
and
not opening that can.
So
and I don't even wanna
intergalactic
get into-
ASPCA.
I don't even want to get into his empathic connection to animals and stuff, because we don't know yet what that's all about or how that really works. But anybody? Okay, I just got this question for you. Did anybody have a dry eye at the end when Burnham is swearing in the guy at the starbase and letting him hang the flag?
It was totally awesome. It was totally awesome. I
That
will
seemed
admit I got a
fitting.
little choked up.
It
What was
wasn't
that,
so
Brad?
much of a tearjerker for me. It fits so damn well.
I just wish she had actually given him an oath of office right there. I really wanted to see her say, "Raise your right hand and repeat after me," because they should have had that.
With how emotional both people were, I kind of get why that didn't happen. it
felt
was
a little
on the forefront.
yeah.
I know it feels a little off, but at the same time, they both have hope reignited.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm
And it's a
looking at the
lot of
trailer.
emotion.
Looking at the trailer for upcoming episodes, that's really going to be the theme of this season is reigniting hope and rebuilding the Federation into a beacon of hope like it's supposed to be. Any closing thoughts? Because we are now 48 minutes
into Discovery.
My
yeah,
only,
and I've used up more than half my tape. So
my only thing on that is for Giorgio. I'm just wondering, when's the Green Destiny going to show up?
the Green Destiny.
Yep,
The what?
the Green Destiny.
Want to enlighten us?
For those who don't know, because Brad was talking about it earlier, she's a famous actress in China. She was the female lead for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And the
see, it's something
sword
I've never
in the
watched.
movie is called the Green Destiny.
Yeah, things from that movie slip into about every one of her roles
Uh-oh.
she plays. It's kind of a running gag.
There is there's actually a series of books, Star Trek series called Destiny, and it deals with the Borg. If you haven't read it, you should read it because it actually gives us the origin of the Borg.
Which I think is kind of a nice idea.
Yeah.
There's also another one, I
so-
forget, a TNG book that also gives us an idea, not necessarily the origin of the Borg, but the origin of the Doomsday Machine. It was actually a prototype for a Borg killer.
Well,
I'll
that's
have to find the name of the book. Yeah, I'll have to find the name of the book.
because it's one of the few things that would be capable of taking out a Borg ship. I mean, it seems to feed off of whatever attacks it. So
Yep. And it was a prototype. They actually, Picard and company find the final version at the edge of the universe, and it goes after the Borg.
we find out later that Catherine Janeway actually went back in time 10,000 years.
Well, considering the amount of
any final thoughts? Any final thoughts before we move on to Bunny's Halloween segment?
no, I'm good.
Jim?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, okay, I've got one. You remember
Okay.
the first episode where she showed up? She first got there. She had that really short hair.
Not really.
She had really short hair in the first episode. In the second episode, she had hair way down to her knees.
Are we talking about Philippa Giorgio Captain or Philippa Giorgio Empress?
We're talking about Burnham.
Oh, Burnham. You talking about this season?
Yeah, Tom, I'm talking about the first and second episode of this season.
Well,
she did say something to the effect of it's been a year.
Wow, your hair grows 3 feet in a year?
And it's the
My hair
future. Who knows?
Well, see, this is what we're talking about. Is it a wig or a weave or what?
Her
hair wasn't super short in the first one. It's pulled back.
I guess we're done.
You know what? I get where you're going from. I get where you're coming from, Jim. And the only thing I can say is, first rule of drama, they wanted to highlight the difference in time by showing her appearance, by making her appearance wildly different. Because they all pulled to the side and way down and stuff, and it was definitely we were definitely seeing a different woman than the one that fell to ice in the previous episode.
No, it is cut in the first one. But like the end of the second season, I looked up images because that's
right.
But you also have to remember that she had been wearing a helmet for a while of it. And in the second episode, it's not just longer. Oh yeah, no, that's unrealistic. Look, I'm looking ahead at what they have on the... and it's not quite knee level, but it is dreaded, almost dreaded, I should say. And it's down to mid waist. So yeah, that's 2 years growth at least. And that's coming from someone that grows their hair, you know, often enough and doesn't cut it for like a year.
Well, reviewing the first episode, the first few scenes, it's kind of hard to make out, but I think she's got it just all bunched up tight on her head. She might have a decent length, but
gelled down.
yeah.
I can tell that much, but it's not very long. Hi, feline. No, do not rub against the mic. That makes ugly sounds. Sorry. Welcome to I Have a Cat 101. They rub up against things awkwardly. Did we lose Tardis?
Well, I think.
I think he's adjusting something.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just needed a second.
Up there with Giorgio because he still thinks I'm talking about her.
Well, we don't.
Oh,
we
you're
don't
right.
have
No.
Determination, Tom.
So yeah, here's something. Here's kind of the beginning of the episode. She doesn't have a lot of hair. You're right.
Yeah,
and then,
but it is like the hairstyle is
The reason I brought it up is that I think much like Chekhov's gun, however she got that hair is going to play something later on in the series this season.
I really hope that we see that missing year, or at least parts of it. That would be so great.
Missing year, or they're going to be able to put on really weird disguises or change their appearance dramatically or something. And I think it'll play into one of the episodes.
Over, and why are you doing it? Stop! You don't press up against the microphone. Stop it.
I mean, and look at that.
I'm arguing with the cat.
There it is.
Yeah,
long hair.
Yeah, the thing is, that was the one I was looking at. That's unrealistic if we're talking about a year, but that could be later down the road too. But there's one where they show her where she's got kind of longish hair. That would be realistic.
I mean,
we didn't even talk about.
She does tend to keep her hair. I don't know enough about hair to make this, but it seems like it's like always compressed on her head. Like it's not actually stretched out. Like it's been compressed.
There have been a couple of times where she's like come out of the shower or something, and her hair's been all poof. Do you remember that episode, Jim, of Firefly, when Shepard Book
I do.
comes out of the shower and his hair is just like, blah, and River is just freaking out.
Well, like I said, I'm not actually talking about her hair. I'm talking about a change in appearance.
Yeah, she's definitely a different person when they come into her.
Dear God! Later on in the episode, there's going to be a way for people to change their appearances, and it's going to play a part in an episode. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about her hair. I'm talking about how different she looks. We're going to find out they've got a machine that makes you look different, and it's going to be used in an episode. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about her hair length. It's probably extensions.
All right, can we move on? Because we've seriously got like an hour on this topic.
Before we go on, you guys should know that we're setting up a Reddit sub community. So start at Reddit and hit Starport Omega, and you can pop in. We're going to set up regular threads for asking questions, things that you might want to know about in the next cast. I'm not promising this is not an AMA. We're not going to answer every question, but if there's something you want to chat about, then we may have that available to talk about. We're going to try to get some notes in there for stuff that's been going on this time. So links to, television shows, books, movies, whatever we're talking about at the time. And also just chat, talk about the same stuff we're interested in. If you have ideas, you want to throw something out there, if you hate us and think we're all dumb, then, go somewhere else and tell other people that. So again, that's there. It's on Reddit. It's r/Starport Omega. And come often, and just don't forget that this is the last gas for 2.5 million light years. So back to our thing. Where is presenter view?
Okay. So as you guys know, it is the month of spooky. And that's just a fun way of saying spooky for those of you who might not know. And I decided to go with basically the birth father of murder mystery himself. And that is my favorite, Edgar Allan Poe. And this is backwards for you guys, but
No, it's backwards for you, but we're seeing it correctly.
okay, cool.
Yeah, it's fine here.
Oh, that's right. She's seeing her stream. Her viewers are seeing the mirror image on her screen.
So yeah, the original, like, he was credited with being the father of. If you go to the next slide.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Sorry, the window wasn't up. There we go.
You know, credited for the genre of detective fiction with his 1841, The Murder in the Rue. And I'm showing the Telltale Heart because he goes off on such a dark and wonderfully disturbing pattern of writing in his young life. To be honest, if we talk about any author of English literature, the biggest genres. And one of the best genres that we have in our lives is the murder mystery. It's stems TV shows, Sherlock Holmes, all of that stems from the creation of this one genre. And I've got a few different books here that have, and these are all images that I have from my collection books of Edgar Allan Poe. And these are all different collections of his work, his poetry, and his stories. And I wanted to go ahead and read one of his smaller poems, which it kind of ties into the theme of the passion, the darkness, and the mystery that kind of surrounds basically our time.
Is that on this next slide, or is that the?
Yeah, that's one of the next slides.
Okay.
So I went ahead and did a little flip here. And it's Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong, who deem that my days have not been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away, in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is therefore the less gone. All that we see or seem is a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-torn shore, and I hold within my hand grains of golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep. While I weep, oh God, I cannot grasp them with a tighter clasp. Oh God, I cannot save one from the pitiless wave. Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? And I wanted to showcase Edgar Allan Poe for our month of October for his dark literary prowess and deep sense of humanity that we should all be able to connect with, especially in this year. And I hope that you guys take some of that with you and don't forget, a mastermind. And this is my less decorative book. But it's also my textbook. So.
You are here.
Huh?
Nothing. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
You
What you doing there, Tom?
I was trying to find a copy of the book that's old enough. It should be available on Project Gutenberg. So I'm going to look for that right now.
Oh,
Yeah, if you guys want the ISBN number for my textbook copy of Edgar Allan Poe Complete Tales and Poems, I will go ahead and post that ISBN on either the Reddit, if Tom can remind me, or my Twitter later tonight. So, and it's got a lot of his good works in it, including the Telltale Heart and I don't believe it contains the Murders in Rue Morgue, which was the founding talents basically that brought us the murder genre.
You should also check out the Alan Parsons Project album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. They did a lot of basically they put set songs to some of his poems.
Wait, Alan Parsons. I'm sorry, I can't hear that name without thinking of the BBC character.
The Alan Parsons Project?
No, just Alan. I think it was like Alan Partridge or something like that. It was a famous character from the BBC series.
What is that? Oh, I see the skull. That is so cool.
So let me.
That is cool.
I cannot see anybody right now. Oh, look at that. Yeah, I went through an
a couple years back.
I went through an Alan Parsons phase while I was back in like 2000. I want to say 2003, 2004, and I stumbled across Tales of Mystery and Imagination, and it's pretty cool hearing that poem, actually, the one you just read, set to music. And if you are a music file, you should go check out Alan Parsons' music, because it is definitely not your typical rock and roll.
Okay, I'm gonna show this before I get mauled. So I got Chrissy a Halloween themed toy. Does anyone know who this toy is?
Lamb chop.
Lamb chop, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say lamb chop with a witch's hat. Or is that a safety cone?
That is a witch's hat. Also in the background,
cool.
you see October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I did buy a commemorative breast cancer awareness lamb chop. She has pink paws and the pink ribbon on one. And real quick, the cat is going to attack me for her toy. So it also squeaks. If you look over my shoulder, I'm gonna get attacked by doing this.
I don't see. Oh, for a second I thought it started creeping up on you.
I don't want to be within reach of that when she actually gets it. Oh, she's decided to sneak around the other side. She loves these things with passion, and this one is actually almost her size. So this is for small dog, and this was for normal dog. So yeah, so I got lamb chops for the month, and lamb chop is like her favorite toy to attack, and I have no clue why. So
Tastes like vengeance? I don't friggin' know. Cats are a mystery to me.
I should really stop that before I get attacked. She is just staring at me from the edge of the couch. All I see is big fucking eyes. If I get attacked and I scream, you'll know why. Okay, Tom, so do we have our next subject?
Yes, we do. So, last week we
see
talked...
a website. You are here, Starport Omega.
Sorry, I was on the Reddit page. So... Dag burn it! Stop doing that. There we go. So last week or last time I should say, we played around with my turntable a little bit, and I have actually been having a lot of fun with that in the last couple of weeks. My stylus has all arrived, and I've got like 3 styluses on the other one. Word to the wise: if you're selling or buying turntables on eBay, make sure that the stylus and the tone arm counterweight are disconnected and separately packed. I got a unit in the mail where the stylus was just bouncing around inside of the turntable, and it just destroyed the stylus. There's all kinds of scratches on the inside of the dust cover. It really
A mess.
ruined it cosmetically, and I had to replace parts. I was going to replace the stylus anyway, so it wasn't any loss, but it like I said, it ruined the cosmetics of the dust cover, and I'm disappointed by that. Anyways.
Mine, I had the same issue with a turntable I got. The tone arm is actually bent right where the tone arm rests on the little stand that holds it in place.
Yeah.
It was bent right there, so I couldn't play any records properly. I had to replace the entire tone arm.
Oh, that's a bummer, man. So, excuse me, my tape recorder finally arrived. My big 10-inch tape recorder. I don't know if this was here last time or not, but I found the tape I was looking for of Grandpa's radio station. But one of the things I wanted to do with this guy, if you'll see, I don't know if you can see him, but we're actually recording audio from the show, from this webcast. And you see the meters are moving here. The issue being that when you're recording, I wanted to make mixtapes, basically, literal mixtapes on 10-inch reels. And I needed something to set the level of the tape before I started recording. So I was like, what do I need? I need like a test tone generator to create a test tone to see what the tone sounds like and what kind of quality the tape is. So I went to Amazon and I looked at test tone generators, and I'm like, okay, I know I spent a bunch of money on equipment already. Do I really need to spend another $100 on a test tone generator? And maybe I can run one on the PC. Well, it turns out that PC test tone generators are just as expensive as the hardware. I mean, what's the point in spending $100 on a computer program when I could buy a whole box that does the same thing, right? I actually have a $5 test tone generator on my iPhone. I'm not going to bother pulling that up, but you can find it on. It's called Signal Generator, and it works great. It creates black noise, just such things as black noise, white noise, pink noise, Brownian noise. It does sine wave, square wave, triangle wave, sawtooth, any frequency in the entire audio spectrum. But I thought, what? I have Audacity, and I've been using Audacity to record samples of audio from the tape recorder to the computer. And I thought, well, why don't I just use Audacity, record a 10-second audio sample that I can use to adjust the knob and make sure the audio level is recording right, and I'll stick that at the beginning of my playlist. So what we're going to get a quick demo on how to cheat, how to create audio test tones and white noise in Audacity, and save you the money of having to go out and buy expensive hardware. And the fun part is, what we're going to actually build is not a test tone. We're going to replace a white noise generator. So those things you can go buy at the drugstore that are like $100, and they have all those tones in them, and like you can listen to the rain and all these other things. And everybody always uses the same thing. They just use the white noise, the fan noise. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to build the fan noise in Audacity, and so that you can do it all for free, assuming you have any sort of an MP3 player, smartphone, and any sort of speaker that you plug your smartphone into. So let's get started. First, I need Audacity running, so let's get that started up. And I will put that over on the right screen so you guys all can see it. And don't make a liar out of me. There we go, baby. Okay. So anybody who's ever used it, anybody who's ever used anything related to audio will recognize this.
The slideshow.
Okay, give me a second.
No problem. I just thought you should know.
Screen. No, that's why I was waiting for somebody to say something. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
So now we're seeing my whole window over here, or the whole desktop over here. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining how the program works. You can work that out on your own. But as we're already seeing over here on this other computer, let's see if I can do this without making a fool out of myself. As you already see on the other computer, we've been recording all along. And you see we're building the you got the waveform going on here. So this is basically time as you go to the left to the right, and then all your transport controls are up here on the top. So you can have. Yeah, let's do that. Let's zoom back out here.
Actually, I love your eyeball, by the way. But
thank you. Let's just go to this one for a few minutes while I'm working on this. I gotta reposition that camera. So anyway, so we're gonna get started. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new track. So let's create a mono track. You could do it in stereo, but it's really kind of pointless. And let's just create 30 seconds of. Let's try my test tone out first. So let's create 30 seconds of a tone. So what I did on my, I just created a 500 hertz tone, and I said, let's make it go for 30 seconds. I'm going to make this one go for 5 seconds. And then tell me if you guys can hear this, and hopefully it won't blow your ears out. I'm gonna turn down the magnitude for this.
As we all.
Okay, so does that actually come out?
Nope.
No.
Of course it
doesn't. By the way, if we're doing a monitor, Discord every now and then doesn't record the monitor. It'll record from applications, but not monitor.
Oh yeah. Let's see if we can get. Let's see if we can get it to record Audacity's window. Here, try that.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a 500 hertz tone. Now, so the fun part is what we can do is now we can take and we can go ahead.
The only reason why I know that is because I use this every day for video editing. Because my voice tone is so different from these guys. It's like high freaking peaks compared to theirs. Cheers.
So I just did what I do is I create a 1 second silence. Beautiful, isn't it? So then we're going to create 2 more tracks. So I'm going to add another mono track and another mono track. We're going to pan this track to the left. We're going to pan this track to the right. And then we're going to create 2 more tones. We're just going to copy this guy. They come down here, copy him, copy our gap. I could probably do this. Right now, somebody's screaming at the computer that I'm doing it wrong. There we go. So now we have. This is so quick, right? And now we have something that will allow you to, when you go to make your recording, to actually tell that not only are you working, you got your audio levels right, and also that you've got your left and your right channels set correctly. So this probably won't come out in stereo as you're listening to it, but you can at least get the idea. Now that's just coming out of my left earpiece. And then this one over here is in my right ear. When I tested this earlier today, I actually had my button set wrong on my audio interface, so it was all coming out of the center.
Real quick fun fact: Discord will only let you hear one side of it. So for any of you who are wondering if they've gone deaf in their right ear, you have not. It's just Discord.
So we only got the. That's interesting. So we only got the left ear. So
I heard it on both
now. Yeah, I heard it in both as well.
Okay, so it might just be my headset. Or I need to go get my hearing checked.
And I'm looking at my feed over here, and it actually did come out of both sides.
Okay, so it might just be my
carrying stereo.
So that is odd.
So now that's super simple. It's super simple.
I wonder if my screen picked that up.
That is not a disaster at all.
Right. Did anyone in stream actually hear the right sound? This one here? Oh, he's deleting them. Never mind. Never mind. Just curious. Just curious, got all this going on. Continue.
So you could do other fun things like there's another thing you'll get to find on YouTube called Binaural Beats. So a binaural beat, again, we're just going to generate a simple tone. Let's generate this one at 100 hertz. And I'm going to make this a little longer. I'm going to make this 30 seconds. We're not going to play all 30 seconds, but you guys might not hear this, but okay, so we're going to stick this on the left channel, and then we're going to duplicate this track. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. And we're going to stick this track over on the right channel. Now, obviously, what you should be hearing is something coming out of both speakers. Are you getting both sides, Bunny?
I'm getting nothing.
Well, I'm hearing something, but it sounds like someone's holding one of those.
Well, it sounds like you're
old
moving
back
the slider
massagers.
back and forth.
Yeah, I was moving the slider back and forth there. Well, so Jim was getting stereo out of that. So, but what binaural beats is they actually generate a second tone at a slightly different frequency. So we're going to add that mono track back. This time I'm going to generate a tone on here I'm going to go to 105 hertz. That's a really small difference. That's only a 5% difference. But it's enough that if you were in a band and you had two instruments playing, that would be out of tune. You'd be hearing a whoa, 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 whoa. And we'll demonstrate that real quick if you guys can hear it.
Gosh.
So if I center both of these and we play them together.
I'm not sure if mine is actually picking it up because Hunter's saying that he's not hearing anything either.
So are you hearing like a anything there? You're not hearing
I am.
Yeah, I can hear it.
And you had two instruments playing.
wonder if you
that
turned
would
down
be
the
out
volume
at one point, Bunny, because I was streaming a game or something and it was too loud for you.
Oh, yes, I have. Thank you. Because Hunter's saying that he's not hearing
We'll play that again.
There we go. That.
Yeah.
So
That's a
now
bit
what we're going
much.
to do is we're going to put one over on the left channel and one over on the right channel. You okay there?
Okay. Let's
You're
not
like
break fun here. Okay.
I'll turn the volume down. I'll turn the volume down on these a little bit just to make them a little bit less stressful on you there.
Oh.
So now listen to that. Look at that look on her face. She's like, what? So what's happening there is each ear is hearing those tones, but you're not getting the mechanical mixing. So they're mixing in your brain. And it's freaky, isn't it?
It makes it hard for me to see, so I think that's something neurologically wrong with me, not something about
Oh,
the.
turn it back on.
Okay.
I want to see if I can tell the difference.
No, I think there's something wrong with it because just
I'm
one
getting the
ear,
same out of my
it's
kids now.
pulsing.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to put I'll make a video sample of each one of these tones and stick it up on YouTube, and we'll put the links to the YouTube videos in the Reddit page, so the Reddit post, so you guys can actually listen to these as we go. And so I'm actually creating a little album of tones on YouTube Music as well, with all the test tones that I've been building up, because I have to have them up there in order to put them in my playlist. So, okay, now as I was doing this, I'm like, I still want one of those white noise generators, right? And I was looking at white noise generators, and I almost bought one, and I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to spend the money on one of those things. So I thought, what if I created a white noise sample in Audacity? Turns out Audacity has a noise generator. So instead of generating a tone, we're going to generate a noise. There are three types of noise that this thing has available. So you have what's called white noise, and white noise is basically every part of the audio spectrum is covered in the white noise. So you can use that for tuning speaker systems. You can use that for tuning audio systems. I can use that with my tape deck with a spectrum analyzer to make sure that to see what the actual response of the tape is. White noise is for mechanical testing of audio systems. Pink noise is the same as white noise, but the audio is tuned so that the higher frequencies fade out faster. So pink noise is what you actually hear, rather than what the mechanics of the sound works. And putting this
Please tell me they called it pink noise in reference to human pink meat for receiving it.
I don't know. I really don't know. And then Brownian noise. Brownian noise is based on the concept of Brownian motion. It's actually randomness. And Brownian noise is basically the sound that comes out of a fan. So we're going to create a quick Brownian noise sample here. So we play that back, and I'm going to turn the track down so we don't blow anybody's ears out.
Appreciate it. I am.
So, anybody on an airplane? Sorry, was that still too loud, Bunny?
Oh.
Dude. I have sensitive ears. And that just sounds. That's like nails on a chalkboard to me. Just.
So it's kind of harsh, right? You wouldn't be able to sleep with that going on in your room. It's kind of harsh.
Just fine.
So what we do is we actually can go in now, and we can go into the effects menu, and we can go into the where was it? We can either go with filters.
Is this your segment to torture me?
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole job. My whole job is to see if I can torture you. So what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called a filter curve EQ, and we don't need to boost anything. We're going to turn the boost out, take it out of the chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the way this works. The left side of the screen on this filter is low frequencies. That's the stuff down here. The boo. And up in the right side of the screen are the higher frequencies. So talk to me, Bunny.
Hi.
Oh, she's over here.
Am I seriously?
So what we're going to do is we're going to break this line, and we're going to create a curve, and we're just going to filter out all the high frequencies. We'll start at 1,000 hertz to just hear what it sounds like. So see how now it's kind of like a lower, more hushed.
Sounds like when Final's breathing into his mic.
It's starting to sound like the inside of a jet airliner when you're in flight. We can bring the whole thing down, and now we can do things like, you remember in Star Trek: The Next Generation, it always had like that low rumble in the background.
Yeah, the ship noise.
So now we can go like this, and okay. The problem here is that I took way too much noise out, and it's basically disappeared. So we're gonna bring this up.
We're not
to about
seeing
here.
any of this on your stream.
What?
Yeah, it's not going to show us the.
It just shows the mouse moving. That's it.
Yeah.
Not showing the dialogue. Oh man.
Yeah. But then we'll lose the audio. You'll have to switch back and forth, so it should be fine.
So, give me a second here, just so I can show you what the. So the screen. There we go. So this is the filter curve dialog. Again, the left side of the screen is the low frequencies, the right side of the high frequencies. And we can adjust the level of different frequencies of sound, kind of like that graphic equalizer on those old 80s stereos. And
the good stereos?
The good stereos, that's absolutely right. Only the good ones had graphic EQs. And so something like this will allow us to create a nice muffled, or even, like I said, we can kick this up and get some of that low rumble going back in. So I'm going to kick in some low rumble. I'm actually going to kick the rumble in around 100 hertz. So we're going to save this, and I'm going to switch this back over to, I wish I had sent the samples to Bunny like I was going to. Okay, so we'll go back over here. See, now it's got that more low rumbly, highs are basically gone, and now it just sounds like the, so I mean, that's just, there you go. There is your $100 sound generator for free. Software's free. Nobody's got a copyright
for this.
Nobody has a copyright because you made it yourself. So what I did, I just took and loaded the audio samples. I picked up a $20 MP3 player from Amazon, just this little Victor MP3 player, and I loaded up the sample on that, and I plugged it into my my Klipsch speaker in my room, and I can just turn that on. And you know what? Surprisingly, it sounds just like a fan. The difference is you don't get the mechanical noise of the blades, you don't get the motors grinding, you don't get the fan wearing out, you don't get the motor going ooh, as it, so for those of you that can't sleep without a fan but don't want a fan blowing on you, give that a try.
You're still gonna rub on the microphone.
I think the cat is attempting to create his own background noise.
So again, we're going to have a link to Audacity. I'll post a couple of, I'll repost a video on how to do this, since it kind of got lost in the dedicated tutorial, since that got lost in the stream and all that stuff. Next time I will have it all come through here so you can see all the video at once. And So, anyways, and you can also, by the way, you can also do things like take those test tones at the beginning and record them back into Audacity, and then you can compare the amplitude on the scale to see where your audio system is rolling off or where your tape is having trouble. So, lots of things you can do with a free piece of software, and this rolls right into the whole analog studio that I'm putting together over here, and the ability to make good recordings. So, back over to who is next. Oh,
You
now
closed your stream.
I did close my screen because there we go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And next.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so rules of the game. I am in control of the mute button. If this gets too out of hand. This is going to be a debate. Tom, what debate are we having tonight?
So we've been talking about time travel a lot since Discovery, the Discovery travels forward in time. We all know that you can travel forward in time by simply going to sleep, right? But time travel stories always involve going back in time and often changing the past. So my question to you guys, who do you think gets time travel the most right? Not so much in terms of what machine makes time travel work, but in terms of what would happen if you tried to change the past? Can you change the past? And what would happen if you actually did it? So each of us is going to go for, well, let's call it 2 minutes, since that seems to be the debate format du jour, and just tell us what your idea is, and then the rest of us will try to challenge you a little bit, and everybody gets a turn. So let's roll a dice. Let's roll a die. Who goes first? Alexa,
and I'll
pick a number between 1 and 5.
Wait, why am I in this?
2. 1, 2. Jim, you get to go first.
Okay.
Oh, great. Which one do I think does it the rightest? Well, does it have to be a movie?
It could be a television show or a book or whatever.
How about a book? How about Thrice Upon a Time by James P. Hogan? You and I talked about this the other night.
Yes.
And that is the one where if you actually change the future, then the past that you were communicating with disappears and is replaced with another past. Unfortunately, the people in the old past don't know anything about your interactions with the future past. So basically, communication becomes the best thing to do is not to answer if somebody knocks, because you don't want to disappear.
What you're saying is you're not actually traveling to the past, but you're communicating to the past.
The book did not have actual travel. The book had communication. And the communication was, this guy got a weird message on his computer, and it said, "Be careful of the jar." And he looked, and he was just about to knock a jar off his desk. And so he stopped, and he tried to get in touch with where the message came from, and it didn't matter what he did, he couldn't get in touch with them. Because once he didn't knock the jar off, that possible future disappeared. The one where they knew he was going to knock the jar off, obviously that no longer occurred. So they were going to replace with somebody else who had no idea what he was talking about.
So what Jim's describing is what's called a paradox, and it's very similar to the grandfather paradox, where Bunny, what's the grandfather paradox?
I feel like I'm back in school.
She's like, I don't want to know. I have a counter.
I'm a fucking moderator. That is it.
So the grandfather paradox basically says that you can't change if you go back in time to kill your own grandfather, then
can't.
How were you born in order to go kill your own grandfather? So in the case of this story, if you send the message to the past to say watch out for the jar, and the guy doesn't knock the jar off, who sent the message?
And that's why they were gone.
Should I put 2 minutes on the clock for someone to rebuttal this theory? Does anyone wish to rebuttal this time travel paradox by
Time
communication.
travel madness.
Maybe what we need
No.
to do
We've
is have,
got the
maybe we
time
need to have 2
travel
rounds. We need to
madness.
have a round of
I say personally that what I
openings
Yeah,
and a round
it
of
should,
closings.
it should be
I think
basically what it would be
personally
is Jim talking for 2 minutes and no one else butting in.
I
So
think personally that my theory can't be correct because it didn't involve a shiny silver car.
Okay, then.
okay, Tom, roll the dice.
Alexa, pick a number between 1 and 4. 2. Let's see. 1. Let's see. 1, 2. Jim already got picked, so Judd, you're next.
I was about to be up again.
All right, how about this? Every single instance of time travel, no matter the media, is correct. But they're all incorrect. Because we have no idea if you can actually time travel or not.
Oh, you got to pick one, Judd.
Oh, come on.
You got a minute and a half left. Come on, pick a hill and die on it.
I don't think about the time travel story is too much. It's, whatever happens. It's in the story. I like it or not. I don't have any debating about time travel. I feel is kind of a useless subject. I mean, okay, whatever. I mean, was the Avengers, the second Avenger movie? They just kind of glossed over it, like, oh yeah, well, it's nothing like that movie. Yet everything they talk about is pretty much like that movie.
You know what?
Nope. 50
I'm
seconds.
done. I'm done.
Okay, you want to end it with 47 seconds?
I'm done.
Okay, Tom, your rebuttal.
I was going to say that I like the. I think that the time travel in Avengers is maybe the closest to my personal theory of time travel. You notice that none of. Well, think about this for a second. Did any of the actions they performed in the past affect the present in any way? Because they all went back. They picked up some MacGuffin from whoever they needed to go to. They brought the MacGuffin back. And at the end of it, what did they do? They returned the stones back to where they found them. Which means that the present was unaffected.
With one made.
So, is that where you want to end
Brad?
that thought? Good. I'm going to
the
stop the timer thing.
The response I would have to that is huge spoiler for those of you that haven't seen Endgame. The problem is you say that nothing really happened with one major exclusion, Cap.
Yeah, leaving that out. Well, and that's a good point because, but the question being, Captain America. When did Captain America go back to? Because I think that he went back to the time after the television series with Peggy, and he got his time with her after.
Well, if you go look at the pictures she has of her husband, who does he look like? If you look at the frame on her bedside table, and I think it was in the second Avengers movie, there's a picture of her and her husband very old before he died. Well, small problem. He didn't die. This is a theory that's been going on, and I looked at a couple of them and I laughed my head off pretty thoroughly because it looks like she married Cap.
Right. So, and that was in a prior movie where we saw the picture, or are you talking about in Endgame?
No, it was in one of the prior movies, and I'm not sure whether that was intentional or not.
Because in the first, what was it? The first of when was it? Captain America. When did he go see her in the hospital? I don't remember very well. But remember, because he came to the future and he came to the present by being frozen in ice by sleeping for 50 years, and he goes and meets up with her, and
it wasn't one of the Avengers movies. I'm sorry, it was one of the Captain America movies. I think Winter Soldier. This is before she died because she was dead in the third
right
Captain America movie.
I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go rewatch that and see if I can see what you're talking
It was
about.
in the Winter Soldier.
It'd be
That's
interesting to
okay.
see if they
You
set
do
that up
a
and
good
went to
job choking on plastic. You got it up though.
because they really did tightly
Good
couple
job.
all of the Marvel
You're
movies so that everything kept carried into everything else.
Yeah,
least they
and a
tried.
lot of the little details in every single movie links to one of the other movies in some way.
That'd be interesting to see. And not only that, not only did she marry him, time traveler Rogers, but she didn't tell him.
She didn't know.
She didn't tell the younger version that
Well,
that he came back eventually.
yeah, because
Sorry
at that
about
point
that.
she didn't remember him.
Right.
She was suffering from, if I remember correctly, it was
Oh, she
incredibly
had some
advanced
dementia.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
That's depressing.
Yeah, but it's interesting. But let's move on with the format.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
All right. The series that I thought actually did time travel best was actually one of the ones that kind of did it the worst. But they got one critical detail correct, and they called this out. And it's one of the things that's always bothered me about time travel. When you travel in time, you're also traveling in space. And in Stargate SG-1, when they got into the time ship and went back, they went, "Where's the planet?" Well, it's like over there. It's like, and one of the soldier guys pops up. Why is it over there? It's like, because the planet isn't in the same place at this time as previously. And that's one of the things that as soon as I heard that, I went, "Oh, that's the gaping hole in Back to the Future." That just suddenly just like bothers me. It's like every time they travel, he shows up where he in the exact same location on the planet, but the planet isn't in the same location. The solar system isn't in the same location. We're moving at what, 60,000 miles an hour? Just on a planetary level?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, the
I
Earth
mean-
itself is moving. The sun is moving. The galaxy is moving.
Yeah, the entire
universe
universe
itself
is in
is
motion.
expanding.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
that's
you
one of
guys
the
were
things.
good.
That's one of the things that always bothered me about time travel is with the exception of Doctor Who, they never took into account space as another factor. It just, we'll be right back here, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. The universe is in motion, and when they went back in time and they had to fly back to the planet, it really kind of clicked that that's one of the things that most people and writers don't take into account. Whether they're just using time travel as a mechanism to push their story forward, or the time travel itself is a critical aspect of the story, they always go into detail about the time travel aspect, but not the space. So building a spaceship that was capable of time travel made sense because no matter where you go, you're not going to be in what's around you may not be there.
So
Unless
every
you're doing
time
a really
ship
tight. Sorry?
So every time ship should also be a spaceship.
Correct. And that's one of the things I liked about Doctor Who is that time and relative dimension in space. It literally, from the beginning, it was designed to be able to handle that issue. And it's really kind of funny that one of the oldest science fiction shows, actually the oldest science fiction show that's been ongoing, managed to get that right, and yet everyone else gets it wrong.
There's a cat
Go ahead
yowling.
and,
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure I hit my limit there, so I'll just end it there.
Well, I turned that off because it's less of a debate and it's more of a discussion because we're bad at debates. No offense
Yeah.
to this group. We're bad at
Oh,
debates.
yeah.
Because we all add in to everyone else's stuff in agreement and disagreement. We're great at that.
So this comes back to since this is kind of a discovery themed night. This is the thing that drove me crazy about the end of season 2 of Discovery and the beginning of season 3. Does anybody remember? You okay, Jim?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember what happened when they came back from when they used the magic mushroom drive to come back from the mirror universe? At the end of the
Did you
first
seriously
season?
just call it the
I
magic
finally-
mushroom drive?
I finally have somebody else using that phrase. I'm telling you, I hate that.
So,
I hate that damn engine. I hate it.
so the ship comes back from the mirror universe, and what happened? They lost 3 months. They came back. It was 3 months later, if I recall, and the war had basically been lost. And basically, what was it? Stamets basically said, "Well, if you're traveling in time, you're also you're traveling in space. You're also traveling in time." And just like Brad said, any vessel that's capable of traveling that instantaneously traveling across interstellar distances is also capable of instantaneously traveling through time, because time and space are really all one thing. And I thought that the whole idea of the Discovery needing Michael Burnham's angel suit in order to travel to the future was ridiculous, because they should have just been able to power up the spore drive and set their destination dial to 930 years in the future and push a button and go. But setting that aside, there's a book written by Michael Crichton back in the 90s, I think it was, called Timeline, and you see one of the pictures on the screen is the Timeline movie. I don't think the movie does the book justice, but my favorite aspect of the book was that, and this is cheating, by the way, and I admit this is cheating, they did not actually travel in time in a book named Timeline. They traveled to alternate universes, and each universe basically had a different start time. So
Rick and Morty. Sorry.
yeah, okay, yeah, Rick and Morty. So in our universe, time started at 0, because somebody's got to be 0, right? And then they they want to go 500 years in the past and check out medieval England. So they actually, I don't even think it's 500 years. When was the medieval era, the Dark Ages? Well, that was probably about let's just call it 1,000 years ago. So they want to go 1,000 years into the past. Well, they can't physically go 1,000 years into the past. Instead, what they do is they find a universe that started 1,000 years later. So they jump from our universe to that universe, and because that universe started 1,000 years later, they're really 1,000 years. They're effectively 1,000 years in their own past. Except that, and they said this in the book, you can't change. Even if we change something, if we go to the Federal Express office, Western Union office, and write a letter to ourselves and date it 2020, and warn everybody about the coronavirus, it won't get here, because it's going to go to the people in the future of Universe
Cough,
2.
cough. We should use a different name. Cough, cough.
Right. Sorry about that. I won't use that word
Thank
again.
you.
So that that really solidified my idea of traveling through time, in the sense that if you do something that affects the past, you can't do it. I mean, you literally can't change what's already happened. And Michael Crichton got around it by creating a whole separate universe for each time they travel through time. Other stories that I've read, and I can't remember the story, and I really need to find it. But the story is these guys put together this package of technology and sent it 1,000 years into the past. And this thing showed up at a time when people in history were suddenly discovering new things, and they created all these new technologies and all these new mathematical ideas, all showed up just kind of out of nowhere. And the guy's like, yeah, we sent it to this time. And then the other dude, they're like waiting. They're like, how long is it going to take to get there? And they said, well, the transit takes, I don't know, 16 hours. I'm just pulling the number out of my ear because I can't remember what it was. So they're waiting, and then 16 hours later, they're like, nothing's changed. The world hasn't changed. What's going on? And then one of them goes, oh, crud, I just realized what happened. The time that we sent this information package to is a time where all this technology showed up out of nowhere. We changed history, but we did it 1,000 years ago. The history that we changed was already changed before we ever were born. So the loop, the cycle is unbroken, and that to me is what I liked about movies like Timeline. That's what I like about a lot of Doctor Who, but unfortunately not all of Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is great science fiction and great time travel stories right up until they break the TARDIS in order to fix something. And all that is to point to this article that NPR posted. That's basically I believe it was some college thesis that he explained mathematically how time travel is theoretically feasible as long as you don't create a paradox.
And is this
And
what they can? One of the things that you're posting to the Reddit?
Right, and that's the link to this article is going to be on the Reddit page, on the Reddit community. Sorry, and the idea being that he said almost exactly what I was thinking, which is that even if you went to the past and tried to change the events that happened, all that's going to happen is your change, since it already happened before you began your time travel. The changes you make, you're simply participating in those events rather than altering them. Which it really sucks because it's hard to watch time travel stories without. It's hard to watch time travel stories now without wanting to yell at the screen, because what happens in Back to the Future when Marty McFly is fading out? What happens in all these different stories when Keanu Reeves is trying to change his girlfriend's death. It's just like I don't have a good answer for that, so I'm going to shut up now. And anybody else got anything to add?
So confusing.
Yeah. It's all time you want me with.
Do you remember the remake of The Time Machine?
Yes.
Well, about 10 years ago. Remember the line in that film where it's like, how many times did you go back in time and try to save your girlfriend? All the way down to, it's like you moved her out of the way. You decided not to be there and a car ran over. You stayed at home and the house caught on fire. You went for a drive and the car exploded. You were outside on a deck and you wouldn't let her go outside and a meteorite came down on her head. Don't you change the past?
What's going on over here?
Funny enough, the Dresden books had a really good line about that. Dresden was asking about time travel, and Santa Claus, of all people, was the responder, going, you can go back and change small things that don't affect much. But the bigger something is, the harder it is to change. To which he responded, there's a conservation of history principle. He goes, a little more complicated than that, but close enough. For example, if you try to go back in time and kill Hitler, Hitler is a pivotal. Why can't I say pivotal?
Pivotal.
Why am I inserting a B?
You have too many syllables in there.
I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Too many syllables.
Hitler is a pivotal character in 20th century history. And he's often used as an example of why time travel, if it's invented, can't be used the way people think it should be. Because if we were to go back in time and kill Hitler before his rise to power, what would that lead to? We don't know. What if it leads to someone even worse?
Or what if it leads to, and as horrific as World War II and everything else was, what if World War II doesn't happen? What about all the technologies that arose out of World War II that are making our life possible today? Does our world become uninhabitable because we haven't developed the farming and the food tech, everything else that came out of World War II and the space age?
Well, it's just there's too big of a chain of events linked back to that one individual and what he did. I see even Fat Cat's complaining about this.
So, anyways, I didn't see the cats before the stream, so they're expecting dinner. And my cat, I don't know if anyone else saw me jump up. She decided to try to get tape off of this box here, and she managed to get some. So that's why I jumped up, because she was choking on it. She got it up. It's fine, but I had to put her up because it turns out she can get tape off that box.
Well, the next segment is Brad and Judd's. If you want to go feed your cats while they're talking about Zen 3.
Maybe, but sorry. He's being crazy cat right now. I can't really show that without that video camera very well, but I might be able to. The thing with him is, if he gets a hold of me, he will leave gashes on me. So that one I'm going to be cautious about. He's half Bengal. So the next segment, I'll leave it on that. I shall be right back. I'm gonna feed this fat cat. Because if I don't, I'm gonna lose a limb.
I was going to
Or have a few
suggest
extra puncture marks.
Okay, buddy.
we're at about 2 hours on the stream. There's really not much to say
153,
about Zen 3.
Well, no, what we were talking about was going into a kind of a dive into the architecture.
Well, I don't know. I mean, without final hardware being sent to reviewers, it's hard to, at least performance-wise. That I'm starting to actually get kind of tired.
Is that Duke Nukem behind you?
Duke Nukem?
It looked like Duke Nukem was on your screen back there.
No,
Quite possibly.
I thought
that
it was
would be
Cal.
Doom Guy.
Oh.
Yeah, his cousin.
But as far as the Zen 3 architecture goes, I mean, everything that I've seen so far, it is overall better implementation or incremental, which is what they seem to be doing with every generation over the previous. They're doing TikTok like what Intel used to do.
Before it turned
Intel-
into tick tock 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 tock.
Yeah. Because Intel can't seem to get off of 14 nanometer. And in fact, the next CPUs should be out the end of next year. Looks like they're backporting their 10 nanometer processors to 14 nanometer so they can actually make them in mass. I'm wondering how they're going to get around the power and heat, the power requirements and the heat generation of that.
From what was said in the release or the media release from Intel, was that they're pushing certain lines of processors that are in heavy demand, specifically desktop processors, to fulfill their needs for clients like Dell, HP, Lenovo, and such. And they're pushing it back to the 14 nanometer, but it's a bit of a ambiguation because the 14 nanometer is actually Samsung's process. And the part that's interesting about this is they're calling it 14 nanometer, but Samsung calls it 12 nanometer. And I really don't want to get into the huge debate in the how do you measure the size of transistors, because every one of the fab companies and the manufacturers of the technology measures it slightly differently. I mean, realistically, some of the circuits are measured, you could realistically measure in atoms width. The A20 gateway has been at like 5 atoms wide for, 15 years now? You can't go any smaller because then you start running into the random electron jumping issue that IBM ran into with one of their prototype processes that they developed in the mid-2000s. And it just, that gave birth to a whole new type of insulation, the silicon-on insulation system that was developed, which was the first time we actually, instead of doing doping and then insulations, we actually put the actual process on the insulator instead of putting the insulator between them. It's, if you're really out there in material sciences or you really enjoy complex physics, it's a fascinating field, but Intel's kind of stuck because they cannot get their process working. In fact, Intel just took a huge dive today when the news came out that they were still having issues and they were still continuing with the pushback. So I think they took a 6% haircut on their stock value.
10%.
10%? Oh, dear
Damn.
Lord, 10%. I think I might have been looking at a preliminary result in my stock portfolio. Because 10% is a huge chunk to lose.
Indeed.
I think it was, oh, no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the dollar amount. It was about $6, which would have been about 10%. That's a huge problem for Intel. Like, personally, I grew up with AMD. I'm not an AMD fanboy. I use what works, but I've always had a kind of soft spot for AMD because they're the underdog.
Yep.
And yet I'm looking at Intel, aka Chipzilla, and the kind of shenanigans they've pulled, and they're getting their asses handed to them again. The last time Intel was in this bad a position, they gave birth to the modern architecture that they've been using for the last 15 years, the core architecture. And the funny part,
which was based on the
Pentium
Memrom?
3.
Memrom?
No. It was based on the Pentium M, which was actually a modernized version of the Pentium 3. They threw the entire Pentium 4 architecture. The NetBurst architecture got tossed. After all that money, the billions of dollars Intel spent in research and development and process manufacturing technologies, they tossed it, went, it doesn't work. We can't make it any better. We're getting our asses kicked by AMD. Let's go back to what we knew worked, which was the Pentium 3. And its, little cousin, the Pentium M.
Well, and who was it that created the modern desktop 64-bit architecture? It wasn't
AMD.
Intel.
It was AMD.
That's right. Everybody calls it x64, but the truth is, the correct name is AMD 64 because AMD were the ones who actually came up with the ability to streamline 64-bit instructions and 32-bit instructions into the same ISA.
Intel had the IA 64-bit instruction set, and they were actually trying to do that, but AMD already had the x86 64-bit.
Yeah.
And by the time Intel was like, all right, well, this is going to be our desktop processor, AMD already had it for 2 years, and Microsoft said, no, you're going to go AMD's route because we're not going to support IA64. There's no backwards compatibility whatsoever. It's all
There actually was an
64-bit.
Itanium Windows. There actually was an Itanium version of Windows, but I don't think it ever made it to XP. I think it was just for
no,
Windows
it was
2000.
server. It was Server 2000 and Server 2003, and even Server 2008. I don't know if they had a 2008 R2 version that was IA64 because at that point Microsoft was so done maintaining a separate development tree. Because the big problem with IA64, it was a great instruction set. It actually was really good, but here's the problem: no 32-bit support at all. Period. They completely threw it out.
And that was the problem is with the Itanium processors, you lost your ability to run 32-bit x86 tasks. You had to do everything Itanium. There might have been an emulation layer in there, but
they tried the emulation route, kind of like how modern Windows 64-bit supports Windows 30-bit through the WoW or Windows on Windows system.
Well, the difference is with 32-bit
work.
But the difference is with 32-bit software, we're actually running it on the hardware, because our processor is constantly switching back and forth between 32 and 64 bits. Unlike with Itanium, you had to emulate the 32-bit instructions on a different ISA. So it's no different than when they're using those ARM processors now to run Windows. It's like they still have to emulate an x86 to run x86 programs.
Yes and no. The way Microsoft isn't given much information about how they're doing that out, but from what I've been able to glean from the technical documentation and from what I've seen of the actual hardware, they're doing part emulation and part translation. So for certain parts of the code, they're emulating because there is no equivalent in the RISC architecture that ARMS uses. However, there are a lot of integer operations, a lot of the math operations that are critical to modern computing are present. So they're translating it from the Intel code to the ARM equivalent, and they're doing some magic in between that they don't want to talk about or give information about.
There's some hardware support for it from what I understand, but yeah,
it's pretty impressive. But the problem with the Itanium wasn't actually 32-bit. It was the cost, and the cost of an Itanium, the lowest in Itanium at the time that it was being used, was something like $4,000 a socket.
Oh, jeez.
It was expensive. And this is how it really kind of got screwed. It wasn't AMD that killed it. It was actually the companies not wanting to support it, and Intel had yield issues again. They were so expensive because they were not having, if they did an entire wafer, they were getting, I wish I remember the article that said the actual yield numbers, but if I remember correctly, it was less than 50% yield per wafer.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And you can't really bin those because nobody wants a Itanium, Celeron edition, because those are going in servers and high-end workstations.
This was Intel's mainframe competitors, what it was meant to compete against. It was meant to compete against the 64-bit RISC architectures. So like Alpha 64, MIPS 64, stuff like that was not really expensive to implement and didn't have a lot of performance, but it could scale out incredibly. Like, I remember Alpha 64 servers that had 816 processors per unit. An Itanium could do 2 per U.
So, not to interrupt, but I'm going to give you guys a small time reminder. We've been going for over 2 hours now.
Oh dear.
So, if you guys want to wrap up this topic,
So-
that might be a good idea.
The thing that I wanted to say that was so interesting about Zen and what they did is Tom and Jim can remember back in the early computing days where everything had to be separate because it was too expensive to put together into a single chip. But as the technology advanced, the performance cost of separated chips eventually overcame the cost of having a single monolithic chip.
True.
Because the performance differences were so large that people would pay for that difference. Well, now we've reached the point where monolithic chip design has now become so complicated and just massively impossible to generate, to where we're running into an interesting cost where we're going the opposite direction. Zen 3 is chiplets. The actual memory controller and primary interface isn't in there. I'm sorry.
So they're
Zen
putting
2.
multiple
Sure.
dies on a like a mega die or something.
Jed, repeat what you just said.
Zen 2 is the same way. In fact, what Zen 3 is, they're using the same board controller that Zen 2 is using. They're just updating the chiplet cores.
So basically what Zen did is, instead of having your core execute, what we refer to as your core, your processor, and your memory controller, and your interlinking, and everything all on one chip, they took the complex part, the part that is truly important, the cores, and pulled it out. Now this is more like what you see in mainframe and supercomputers, where you have a CPU separated from the memory controller. What has actually happened is the memory controller and all the linking, basically all the logic to run the motherboard, is a separate chip, and all of the CPU cores are separate dies that talk to the main chip, akin to how the early processing or the early computers had everything broken out into different chips. This is how Intel or how AMD got around the yield issues. They didn't have to print a whole new wafer for this generation. They continue to use the wafers and technologies that are working for the memory and interlink and control, and a completely different wafer for all the chips. So if one chip on that die doesn't meet specification, that's okay. They don't toss out an entire processor. They just toss out that one little piece. And if you go into their server line, you have 1 chiplet, 2 chiplet, 3 chiplet, 4 chiplet. That's how they're getting 64 cores in one socket. They're using 4 16-core chiplets. And that's one of the things that made the Infinity Fabric so amazing, is they're doing all of this on a single processor. They basically take an old school mainframe technology and moved it into a single socket for the consumer market, and the performance benefits are through the roof. But as anyone that's looked at Zen 1, 2, Zen Plus, and all the variations, there's been a lot of teething issues. That's why I'm really looking forward to the new Gen 3 of Zen, because it looks like they finally cracked a lot of those teething problems, just looking at the basic performance difference on the tests that have leaked. It's 30 or 40% faster than the previous generation. And the previous generation was within margin of error on Intel on a lot of tests. So if this is faster than the previous generation, once this hit the real world, how much better is it actually going to be? And that's me nerding out over architectures.
No,
I'm sorry. I find this
No,
stuff
it's
truly
fantastic stuff.
fascinating.
the architecture on that chip is way cool bitchin'. It really is.
And I love the idea of chiplets, and I'm, it, like I said, it brought to mind how binning works, where the idea was if you have a chip that works at 5 gigahertz but not at 6, you sell it as a 5 gigahertz chip, and then the ones that work at 6, you sell as 6 gigahertz chips. Obviously, that's crazy. We don't make 6 gigahertz chips yet, but that's been going on for years. And you remember back in the do you remember back in the 90s when people were taking Intel's processors and they were like shaving off the labels
I do.
and relabeling them?
Yep.
I had the opposite of that happen. I bought an AMD 1 gigahertz that turned out to not be actually a 1 gigahertz. It was a 750. I guess I had exactly that happen. It was actually a 750, and if I ran it at if I ran the front side bus at 133, machine wouldn't boot. I had to hit reset and reset and reset, and after about the 5th time, it would boot. And now imagine if half the chips you make aren't up to spec. On a huge die like the titanium, yeah, your yield is going to go to crap.
That's certainly a profit margin going to.
And with chiplets, you can bin all the chips appropriately and stick together a bunch of mid-level chips that perform well but not great, on one big chip that performs well but not great.
Well, the nice thing about the Zen architecture, or at least Zen 2, starting with Zen 2 and then into Zen 3, is that they can make the memory IO die controller on, say, 12 nanometer, 14 nanometer. It doesn't require to be as like a 7 nanometer process because there's they can afford to have it a little bit bigger. Doesn't require as much power, that kind of thing. And then the chiplets themselves, they can do 7 nanometer. And for yield, if on a chiplet, an 8-core chiplet, 1 or 2 cores is bad, okay, we sell that as a 6-core chiplet or a 4-core chiplet, and we put that in there. So they have the Ryzen 3, they got the Ryzen 5, they got the Ryzen 7, they got the Ryzen 9.
They've got ways of taking advantage of mistakes in processors to give you a better chip.
Yeah.
They have ways of making your chips.
Okay, I think if we keep going down this rabbit hole, we're going to go for another hour or two, and then Buddy's going to be really angry.
Hey, don't bring rabbit holes into this.
Yeah, I mean,
We already did more holes, no rabbit holes.
to
Fine, rat hole.
dream the time travel dream.
And
To
that is if
go
you're in the mood
without
to talk
having
about
to
it.
go.
Tom,
Yes.
can you see my hand?
No.
My hand.
Yes.
You're the one flipping the pictures, right?
Yeah.
And I raise my hand, flip the pictures. We're going to see if I can get through this and make Bunny happy.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
What I've been looking at lately and been watching for the last 2 weeks is Star Trek fan films. I like them a lot. They are... Some of the production values aren't so great. Others are absolutely outstanding. The ones we're going to be talking about tonight, the production values are absolutely unbelievable. It's like you're watching a show right from 1965. This is the cast of Star Trek Continues. Now, this is the actual Enterprise bridge that they have up here. Vic Magnolia bought an 18,000 square foot church, stripped it out to its just bare walls, and bought a copy of the blueprints for constructing the sets that Paramount and Desilu did back in 1965. He built an exact duplicate of every set that they ever had on the show. Hence, it looks really, really good. They made 11 episodes, and they were going to make more, but that was when CBS came out with their "you can't make any more fan films that make sense. You can only make the 15-minute nonsense versions." And the very first one they did had one of my favorite characters in it. I am Apollo. You can tell I'm a god by how damn big I am.
And the fact that he's wearing very little.
And he's wearing very little. This is Michael Forrest.
And he looks good doing it.
This is Michael Forrest, and he's been in a lot of other films and a lot of westerns, believe it or not, and a Twilight Zone episode. And here he played Apollo. 50 years later, he played Apollo again on the very first episode of Star Trek Continues.
Oh, that is
It was
awesome.
a wonderful episode. It was a little rough because it was their first episode, and first episodes usually are. But it allows you to get a chance to get used to the characters because they redo Spock and Kirk and all them. And it allows you a chance to get used to the characters again without, really having a problem with it. Because while they're the same characters and they act a lot the same way, they don't look like them and they don't sound like them. But by the end of this episode, you really don't care. This is the second episode, Lilani. We have our Green Array and Strange Girl, but in this one, the episode revolves around issues of sexual slavery, prostitution, and a lot of deep, heavy issues, which kind of brings this episode down, but it has a really good message to it, which is something else that I really like about Star Trek, is that sometimes it will talk about things and will actually mean something. You can pull something from the episode. The acting in this is wonderful, and they had a surprise guest host, or guest star, and it's the next one, Lou Ferrigno, also known as the Incredible Hulk.
He's
Would, in
green
fact, even
too.
change his makeup.
Man, I don't recognize him with the bald head.
Vic Magnolia
Yeah, right?
is a voice actor who does Full Metal Alchemist. And so he knows a lot of, I don't want to say minor stars, but let's say they don't have TV shows like they used to. You know what I mean? And apparently Lou Ferrigno is a big Star Trek fan and begged to get in on this, and they wrote him a part. So he plays the big heavy in this episode. It's actually really, really good. But then
I think
after
he was in a couple of episodes of Chuck.
he was in a lot of different little things.
Oh, there we go.
This is the third episode, Ferris to the Mall. It is my absolute favorite that I've seen so far. I've watched through all of them, but I've only really watched the first three. This one takes place right after the episode Mirror, Mirror. And instead of starting off on the original Enterprise that we know, it starts off on the Mirror Enterprise and Spock making up his mind whether to be the revolutionary to overthrow the Empire. And that's what this entire episode is about. It is absolutely wonderful, and one thing that you have to keep in mind, that it doesn't matter who does it, Spock looks awesome with a beard.
Yes.
I don't know what you're thinking. He should always have a beard.
I personally, I think that bearded men are more virile and just respectable looking.
As he pets his.
Yeah,
Wait,
no, I'm over
that's
here
not
rubbing my
fair.
beard
I
too.
need to get one I can glue on, you guys, because I can't grow my own.
Well,
You need
we
to
are
get one of
coming
those
up on
evil
Hall-
goatee kits.
Well, we are coming up on Halloween, so maybe you should give it a shot.
Yeah, here's his credit. Zamon in Star Trek Continues. It's 2014.
This is a picture with three of the people in that episode together. The guy in the red shirt back there in back plays Scotty. That is actually James Doohan's son, Chris. Who
Oh,
just
wow.
reprised his dad's role, and he did a little thing talking about that, and he was just jazzed about doing it.
Oh yeah, I would have been too.
He said it was great. And by the time you get to the third episode, the kind of it not really being like the original series starts going away. And for example, I'll give you this. Here's a scene out of Mirror, Mirror with the original cast. Standing in the transporter room wanting to know what the hell is going on. Here's the same scene with the new actors. It looks close enough to keep me interested. And quite honestly, if it doesn't look close enough to keep you interested, I don't really know what to tell you. Because
Good God, I'm looking at the backgrounds, just going.
like I said, it's
identical.
the exact duplicate of the sets they used at Paramount. They're exact.
Which one is which? I can't tell which one is William Shatner.
I do love how the fact that this actress did not starve herself in the fan film, because like to actually have abs on a female, you have to have a very low body fat percentage, which is actually unhealthy. We're actually made to have fat on our lower stomachs. It's to protect our reproductive organs, but so many people forget that. Anyways, continue.
It's just
That's where my brain goes.
It's amazing to me the amount of work that went into this and how much money this guy must have actually spent on putting these sets together. You can actually go and rent them now. He rents out the sets for people to put together, the little 10 and 15-minute episodes they do now. So when you see any new fan films and they look really good, it's because they're using the sets that he built.
I kind of
So
like
I
to rent
say,
it out.
go and see it because Apollo commands it. Did I time it or did I time it?
That was really good.
I'd actually kind of like to rent the sets out, not for filming an episode, but for like doing like a little documentary about how Star Trek has affected every one of our lives as, you know, geeks and nerds, and doing it on a set of Star Trek, the original series. Even though I wasn't alive when it was around, its effects still, you know, propagated.
I can
Yeah.
barely remember it on. There was a rerun when I was a kid. They had the Assignment Earth was on as a rerun. I can remember watching that when I was a kid with my parents. I would have been about 5. And I can just barely remember it.
My first episode of Star Trek that I actually remember watching was the one with the shape changer in the insane asylum. And
Destroy.
I caught it at 11 o'clock at night on a weeknight during the summer. I forced myself, I'm like, Star Trek, this looks interesting. So I made myself stay up till 11 o'clock. I actually sat through the news. That should tell you how committed I was at 10 years old, 9 years old, to sit through the news to watch that episode. And for the rest of the summer, I probably watched the entire TV series during that summer because there's only 70 some episodes. And so I never got to see any of the original run of Star Trek. They were done by the time I was born.
Yeah, a couple of the actors that were in the very first episode of this. Jamie Bomber, the guy who played Apollo in the new remake of Battlestar Galactica, was in it. I don't know. He must have lost the bet or something because he really didn't seem to be into it too much. And that one was pretty neat.
Okay. So since we're wrapping up here, if you guys won't mind sticking around for about 5 minutes after stream and helping me go through a raid, thank you guys for joining us so much. And again, you can always join our Reddit page, and that is at Starport Omega /Reddit. Or you can just follow this simple link right here that I put in chat. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can follow Judd on his YouTube channel to rewatch this episode, including some of the parts that you may not have seen because you were not here yet or that you stepped away. And he'll have the full thing uploaded pretty quick after the stream ends.
Well, we're streaming live, so as soon as the stream ends, it's it.
Yes. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. But yeah. Anyways, if you guys want to wait a little while, I will have an updated version of it to my YouTube page in about a week's time, next Friday. And the podcast is every other Friday, same time, about 10 p.m. We're always fashionably late. So when we're early, it's going to be one of those moments of, wait, what happened? What went wrong?
When we're early, you wonder what happened.
So I'm going to go ahead and be rating Axum 666 tonight, and he is streaming
Very appropriate.
Dead by Daylight, which is very Halloween of him to do. It is one of his usual streams. He is an American who is working in Japan right now, and he is actually one of my favorite streamers, and he happens to be streaming at this time. So
All right, well,
we'll
I'm
go
going to
ahead
end
and
my YouTube stream right now.
okay.